this is a Kotlin Conversations where we're having conversations with just some of the amazing speakers here at Kotlin Conf 2025. I'm your host, Wintuet Dow, and I am speaking with
Vanessa Johnson.
Vanessa. Thank you so much for joining me. Why don't we start with who are you? What do you do? Where do you work?
I work at the New York Times. I work on the Games app. I'm an Android engineer, and I've been there a little bit under a year now.
So how did you start with, so we work Kotlin Conf, so I want to ask you specifically about Kotlin. So was Android your, entryway to Kotlin? And
yeah, actually, I started in Java, and then I switched over to Kotlin in one of my internships for the summer.
Okay. And how did you get to Android?
So originally, I was on iOS. I had an internship in iOS in college, and then I decided to switch over and try Android when I did my first summer internship. And I just never left, so it was pretty good.
Right. Well, I kind of had a similar story. I also did iOS and Android, ping back and forth, and then I flipped to Android also, never left. So here I am still talking to you at Kotlin Conf. So you're speaking this year at Kotlin Conf, and I personally am really, you're talking a topic that I personally, and I think a lot of people that care a lot about user experience care about, and that is accessibility. Can you talk to me a little bit about what is it about accessibility that appeals to you? Like what inspired you to do a talk about accessibility here at Kotlin Conf?
I think it was mainly, I started doing a side project, and I was doing design for my app.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't say that I have the best eye for like colors or anything like that, but just seeing like the contrast between like the text on the background colors and not being able to read it, even though it might look pretty. So I noticed that like accessibility or like being inclusive for different users is very important, no matter like what your app is for, if it's healthcare, games, or like fintech.
Yeah, I mean, I imagine games accessibility is super important.
Yeah.
But that, like the high tide always lifts all boats. If it's accessible for like games, if it's accessible for someone with like visual impairments or mobile impairment or mobility impairments, it's probably accessible for everybody. That's awesome. Do you think that So I think sometimes like as an engineer, I feel like there's so many things that I care about, and I feel like I have a hard time communicating, to business, to stakeholders, like, hey, please care about this thing that I really care about. Do you have an idea, or could you help me make a case on why should businesses, why should companies care about accessibility? What benefit do you think accessibility brings to not just a user, but maybe like an app business? What do you think?
I think for a business, like since there are a lot of people like in the world that have some sort of disability, you're kind of like leaving out that subgroup of the market. So you could be capturing more users for your app and just making your user feel more inclusive and, feel like you're catering to them in a way for them to use your app. So I think, especially nowadays, people are like saying, okay, how does this company, better help attribute something to my life?
Yeah.
So I think putting that like extra step of care can make a big difference in like a user's like experience.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, I mean, it feels like lately for me that it feels like accessibility is something that I guess in general we talk about more. And I think we know that we should care about it, but maybe that's not always the case. Like, have you seen that, not necessarily at your work, but do you see that like maybe kind of, I don't know, around like observationally? Do you think that we're doing a good job at accessibility? Do you think we could do better, like as an industry?
I think we can do better. I feel like sometimes accessibility is kind of left to like the end, like when you're doing like testing, making sure your app is ready to be released. But I think that if you step back and like make sure you kind of incorporate accessibility like tactics or just like ways for you to see how can I make this app more inclusive for your user, like throughout your whole entire development, then it won't be left till the end and kind of like a rush to make a deadline or something like that. It's going to be more like, okay, I took the time from the beginning to make sure that all users, or at least most of my users, feel that they have a good user experience throughout my app.
Is that something that, you discovered, like a process that, you were, this kind of idea of like, not leaving it to the end, as you said, and maybe just being more integrated. Is that something that you learned the hard way, or were you maybe, did you have a chance to see like maybe a better way of doing things?
I think that just like seeing like, say my father, for example, like I was making an app and he was like, he can't read like some of the text that I had on the screen.
Yeah.
So I'm just like, wow. And he wears glasses, but then just imagine someone that has like worse eyesight than him, then you'd make the app like unusable. So
absolutely,
I think that that's taking that into account. Like say, like if you need vision to, use your app, then maybe you're not doing something right. You need to incorporate some other, like feature.
Absolutely. It feels something that maybe, especially if you're lucky enough to not have accessibility needs specifically, that it's easy to overlook because it works for me.
Yeah.
But yeah, it feels like sometimes we need to kind of step outside of our own boxes and experience our apps through other folks' experiences. So I kind of like, so your talk is about not just accessibility, but specifically Android, of course, and both Kotlin and Jetpack Compose. Yeah. Can you talk to me about maybe some of the challenges you've experienced just with, making apps accessible on Android? Like, what do you think the biggest challenges are?
I think I discovered more challenges like when actually testing it out with TalkBack and then just being able to like listen to like the semantics, if they are any, for your app.
Yeah.
And then just realizing that without the semantic, like you defined specifically, then a user that may, like for example, keeping with the same example, like visual impairments, then they wouldn't know like what's on the screen, how to like, navigate the app.
Yeah.
So things like that.
Do you remember the first time you ever like ran an app through TalkBack? What was that experience like?
It wasn't efficient. Like it went through like every single component, and
Yeah.
then it just I feel like it could have been done better.
Yeah.
Just being able to kind of like use semantics to my advantage and be
Yeah.
like, okay, well, these can be grouped together. Say like, and it would be better for the user to like say if this was spoken together,
Yeah.
saying that select this. This may be selecting a certain thing instead of being like not selected or is selected or not selected.
Yeah. So it kind of gave you a different, like, I don't know, it's like literally different experience, of course, but like a different way of like, for lack of a better way of seeing it, seeing the app maybe, just like how things are grouped together. Because again, like I feel like if one doesn't have a visual impairment, doesn't use TalkBack regularly, you just don't see those things. But you could, bunny fingers, see like someone else's experiences. So is there something like you think that, especially now, like in the last few years, we've all been adopting Compose, like we have all these like Kotlin utilities. Is there anything in like particular, like in Compose or Kotlin that makes you kind of excited for, the possibility of apps becoming more and more accessible, or more people, like more engineers like investing time in it? Is there anything that you think makes the process easier, or it just excites you as someone who cares about accessibility?
I mean, I think the Kotlin semantics, like modifier, like attribute, I feel like it makes it a lot easier to, set your content description for like maybe a row in your app. Like you have group together to say, kind of like some examples I'm going to go through in my talk about like, just seeing how grouping components together make the experience better for the user. So I think it's easier than people may think it is.
Okay.
So like just incorporate more accessibility using semantics.
I wonder if that's the thing though too, is that maybe before, kind of like a lot of things with UI, it wasn't easy. So we kind of developed this like bias against doing certain things because we all got to ship features, we all got to get deadlines done, and even though these things are important because they're traditionally hard, we're like, okay, now we have to like have a special project, or we have to like make time for this. But now it sounds like, as you're saying, like it's a little more integrated. Like these kind of different tools that we have are a little bit better. It should just be part of like the normal flow because it isn't hard anymore. So it's just so frustrating. I think it's just one thing is like, I think we're so blessed with so many new tools, but then it's like spreading the word out, like letting people know like, hey, maybe we can change the way we do things because the tooling is different. It's not doing like the same old thing, just a little faster, but being able to do like more with what we have now.
Yeah.
So, sorry, I'm getting my notes. What do you think? Like, so if you were kind of talking to a new grad, and they were learning how to do Android apps, UI, or even just mobile in general, because you've done iOS and Android, what would be kind of your first? What would be your like kind of intro talk to them on? I don't know how to think about accessibility, or like how maybe to, I don't know, encourage their teams or their PMs. Like how would you get them started with accessibility?
I think a good idea is maybe doing like a meeting or a workshop, kind of like having someone from your company, maybe like even a higher up if you can get them to do it, to like step through your app, but like maybe with the screen like off, like you can't see what's on your screen. So if they can step through your app, not being able to see the screen, then I would say that it's on you would have a better say that you're like more accessible. But if they can't go through your app without seeing the screen, then maybe there's some work that needs to be done.
Okay, makes sense. Do you have any like I guess, like advice for testing, like in terms of like devices or things like, because I think that's one thing, especially with Android, a lot of devices out there, a lot of different devices. Do you have any like tips or just like, I don't know, gotchas when it comes to just testing? Like, is testing on an emulator enough that even just doesn't sound quite right coming out of my mouth? Or do you think it's important to actually get, devices in people's hands and make like, hey, you team member, use TalkBack, learn what this experience is like?
Yeah, I think manual testing, like I said, automated testing is also useful. Like you can pick out like maybe surface level stuff. But I think manual testing is also important, like being able to put yourself in the user's shoes, and then like having like a select number of people to actually like test it on their own. Like,
Yeah.
and if you can get like people that have the different type of disabilities, that's probably even better. Then you would know exactly like, okay, these are the areas that need to be worked on, especially for this disability. So I think manual testing is needed, even though you can use automated testing.
Which are there certain parts of like, I don't know, either whether it's semantic definition or as you said, maybe like, testing the structure of an app through TalkBack that's more conducive to automated testing versus like manual? Like, what are the things that we could do? Be like, okay, we can automate this. What do you think? What do you think are the most like automatable parts of accessibility?
I think like if you're using a tool, kind of like I'm gonna touch on like accessibility scanner.
Yeah.
You can take like recordings or screenshots of your screen and be like, okay, maybe it will point to like text contrast or maybe like multiple things on the screen have like the same kind of content description.
Yeah.
So like those, you can like get away with probably using accessibility scanner. But when like stepping through the app and like being able to group things together, then that's probably something you need to use TalkBack for, or like more manual testing.
Right. Well, thank you so much, Vanessa. I mean, I'm a person who loves UI, and it feels like a lot of the fun stuff is pixel pushing, doing cool things, I like doing custom stuff. But I think it's important to remember that always like the UI is for people, and really making it accessible and gearable towards people is super important. So I'm really looking forward to your talk. And you're talking specifically about like accessibility scanner, Kotlin, and Jetpack Compose. All right. Well, if you are interested in accessibility, and you really should be, if you are someone developing an app with a UI, you should definitely check out Vanessa's talk here at Kotlin Conf. Vanessa, if people wanted to find you on the internet, how can they do that?
I do have a Substack. I try to post weekly. Not always, not every week do you get an article, but or a newsletter, I should say. And it's called Vanessa on Mobile. So you can find me there. And then you can also find me on LinkedIn. That's my name, Vanessa Johnson. So.
All right, sounds good. Well, look out for Vanessa Substack if you're interested in hearing her thoughts on mobile. I know I am, and we will see you at the next one at Kotlin Conf. Thanks.